Hello everyone and welcome in another video where I talk about everything in camera. In the previous video on camera, I talk about color profile and the white balance. Today I want to talk about basic panel, and specifically I will be talking about these light sliders such as exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks. This is also a good moment to trying to understand the histogram. Histogram is this thing on the very top where we can see few different colors, including this gray that could represent the white, maybe. Let's call it gray for now, and some of the other colors. So I will tell you what is happening here on the histogram and explain to you each of the sliders that exist here. Very basic thing that we need to understand about our images is the fact that the image is connection of three different lights: red light, green light, and blue light. These lights connected with different intensity give us our image. So, for example, looking at very dark shadows, we can assume we do not have much of these lights. The intensity of these three different lights is very low and in different amount. So if the lights connect equally, we will get pretty much pure black or nearly pure black if we actually have some of the lights. If we don't have any light, then we have black. In the highlight area, we will have strong intensity of these lights, and depending on the amount of these lights, we will have different colors. And this is how we get the image. This is how we get shadows, highlights, and different colors on the image. And these colors you can see over here in the histogram. As you can see, we have the primary colors that I just mentioned. We have the red light, green light, blue light. We can notice some of the other colors over here. I can see yellow, I can see some of the cyan here, but these are not a primary color that exist on themselves, exist by themselves, but this yellow and cyan here is the effect of connecting two lights. So for example, this yellow here exists because red light and green light got connected together, and mix of this light give us yellow. So that's how we get yellow tones on the image. This cyan here is simply connection of green and blue. So this is why on the sky we can see not only blue tones, but some of the cyan tones as well. And this gray color here is simply connection three of these lights that give us pure gray, white, or nearly black color on the image, of course. So this is how we understand the colors on the image and on the histogram. Then other thing, of course, from the left side, we have the shadows. To the right side, we have the highlights. So on the right side, we have more intensity of the lights. On the left side, we have less intensity of the lights. And this is crucial when we start moving the sliders. So first slider, we have the exposure. And exposure is simply the light, the intensity of the light of the image, how exposed your image is to the light. When I'm going to grab this slider and increase this, what you can see is happening. All of these lights existing are moving towards the right side, which means they are moving towards the highlights. And we got the warning. And the warning is that the highlights are simply over the edge. So that's too much. If I will go to the left side, as you can see, all of these lights are going towards dark pixels, and then fully we nearly cover it, and all of the lights exist a little bit here in the dark pixels. So as you can see, as we move the slider, the histogram is changing, and exposure is simply how exposed your image is to the light. The next one is the contrast. So let's see what is happening when we increase in the contrast. So contrast is basically making a stronger relation between the highlights and the shadows. As we increase the contrast, as you can see, the lights, the highlights, and the shadows getting further away from each other. And as they get further away, the contrast between them is bigger. So this histogram helps us to understand what is actually happening. If I decrease the contrast, as you can see, the lights getting closer to each other, which means our image become flat. Next, we have highlights and shadows. It's worth to mention these two at once. When it comes to the highlights, it will be affecting mainly this highlight area. So as you can see, we can split this histogram to 4 different parts. We will have shadows here, somewhere here darks, here we have lights, and here we have the highlights. So if we be working with this slider, as you can see, we have the effect on all of the lights, but the stronger effect is on this highlight area here as they move towards the right side. And as we be decreasing that, this highlights is getting closer to the midtones so that they have less intensity. When it comes to the shadows, as you can see, very similar. If I increase the shadows, I'm flattening these dark pixels. They're moving towards the midtones. So we removing the dark pixels from this image of any color, not only the black, but we remove the dark pixels of any color. It could be blue, red, or anything. And as I increase the shadows, as you can see, I'm moving these pixels, one from the midtone area, from the shadow area, even more to the dark side, so the shadows become darker. And on the bottom we have whites and blacks. That at first could be very similar to highlights, understanding it could be very similar, but it's not exactly working as highlights and shadows, but it's trying to understand your pixels as the color. So whites will work similar as the highlights, but it will try to convert these bright pixels into the whites. So as I'm increasing this, as you can see, all the highlight area become fully white. So it's not perfect for your images, maybe, as it try to flatten and merge all of these lights into the white. So connect 3 lights and you get the white. If you decrease, as you can see, the effect is not so strong anymore. So it's mainly the whites. We achieve the lights as we increase the light. If we decrease the light, we cannot achieve the white. So the effect by decreasing this will not be as strong here. And for the blacks, the same, but the opposite. So the stronger effect will be as we'll be decreasing this. And this time, these dark pixels try to be merged into fully black pixels now. So it's see the dark pixels, turn them into fully black, and the whites turn them into fully white, and then get this really strong contrast here. Of course, the same as before, when we will be increasing this, the effect will not be as strong, simply will be brightening up all of these black colors, the black pixels, and the effect is less than in case of the shadows. For me, much better is to use shadows and highlights if we work with photography, if we want to precisely manipulate the definition between the highlights and shadows. So now let's do something. Let's actually try to make this image a little bit better. For now, when it comes to shadows, highlights, maybe some contrast, we will see what we get. So as on this image, I have a little bit dark of the shadows, so I'm going to bring it back a little bit. Not too much just yet. What I also see, I have quite strong highlights on this side of the face. Maybe I don't want it to be that strong, so I could try to lower the highlights. But in case this effect would be too strong, I could use the whites in this case, trying to see if it's a little bit better. So it works quite well. I'm going to decrease a little bit of the highlights and a little bit of the whites. And as I flattened this by this simple adjustments, I could increase some of the contrast just to make sure that this image is simply not too flat. It got a little bit darker, I believe. I can see it on the histogram. It is indeed a little bit darker, I think, in the mid-tone area. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to push maybe just a little bit of the exposure. Before, after. So a little bit more contrast, a little bit more details in the shadow area. This will be a good start, and when it comes to these adjustments, I might change them a little bit later on once we do more adjustments. So I cannot know if I do all of the work in camera. I cannot know if this is the final yet. I'm not going to synchronize this with other images. Now I'm going to work on this image. I'm going to show you other adjustments, and when we finish all camera work, we can merge this all together a little bit later. But just for you to know right now how to do it, I was showing this in the previous video, so we can select other images from the same series. Once you select them, choose the three dots and you can choose synchronize settings. As we only were working with this basic over here, and we would prefer to avoid maybe something else in case we have some different adjustments on this image, unless we didn't do any other work, then we don't have to do it. We can check none, and I will just make sure that these basic settings, except white balance, because I already did this before, I believe all of them are the same, so it wouldn't matter, and I could synchronize this. Of course, I would have to look through the image if the settings actually work on other images, and when it comes to this basic panel, it's never the case. So for example, this image still has too dark of the shadow, so there will be much work to do, but the synchronizing is good for the start to see if it matches for other images, and then we just do some more work a little bit later to adjust the rest. So, and this would be the basic panel and light sliders, and in the next camera lesson I'm going to talk about texture, clarity, dehaze, and what's really important, vibrance and saturation. Thank you for watching. Let me know if this video is okay. I really want to know. I want to know if it's maybe too long. I want to talk a lot of theory. I want everyone to understand what exactly is happening on the image. But maybe this form could be a little bit boring for some, so I always want to listen what you think about this. Also, make sure you check all of the links in the description. Visit my educational website. You can see my portfolio if you are interested in retouching. This is the work I'm doing on the daily basis. And for now, thank you for watching. See you next week in the next camera video, and see you in few days in the next tutorial on different subject. Thank you.